Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I won't put my hand there anymore. I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you for attending today. It's been a long time coming. We had this planned for a while in the works. It is the spring bee season currently, and it is swarm season, so it gets really busy for us. At home, we're constantly chasing bee swarms all over the Tri-County area, really. I'm very excited to be able to be a part of your day today. So thank you. So my name is Dave Kapinskis. I am a beekeeper. It's definitely not a full-time job, but it is something that was once a hobby, and my wife said it was an expensive hobby. So we decided to form an LLC and create a small business so that we can basically fund our hobby. With that, you'll see some different things. The name of our company is Ouch Farm Honey. We try to be comical about it, right? Because we do get stung. So that's a question we always get. We do get stung. And it's just part of the beekeeping business. However, one of the things that we use is a bee suit. You may see things on the internet. Artificial intelligence is doing a lot with people, out tending their bees in their bikinis. Well, that's not really what we want to be doing. We use all this personal protective equipment to make sure that we have an enjoyable beekeeping experience while we are tending to the bees, and that we check each other to make sure we're zipped up all the way and that they're not going to, find their way in, because they like to find their way in. So before we begin, I just, want to talk a little bit before I play anything up here on the screens. I just figured I would go and talk a little bit about some equipment. The honeybee is, the Latin term for honeybee is Apis melliferae. And if you've ever heard of where honeybees are kept in an apiary. So, that's apiary, Apis melliferae, that's why they're kept in an apiary. So at first, when I heard that term, apiary, I thought to myself, I know of aviary, and what are we keeping monkeys, or what are we doing in an apiary, right? No, that's the stuff, how it was named. So an apiary is really any area that has a colony or two or three or four, that you call that your apiary. That's where you would have your bee boxes arranged and set up. A lot of beekeepers use their traditional cinder blocks to get their hives up off of the ground. We decided, as a model for us, we like to build a wooden stand. So all of our hives at whatever apiary that we have them at, all our colonies, they are on wooden stands. And we did that for several reasons. We did that because the cinder blocks, they actually harbor mice. And mice and bees, not a good combination, because they like to find their way into the bee box and do a lot of, horrible things inside a bee box. So, we decided to go with a wooden stand because the cinder blocks would not be present within the apiary. So, all right. So if we start over here, and I can, I'll pass some things around, but this is a bee box that we keep at one of the bee clubs that I'm affiliated with. And these particular frames have some descriptions on them and talks about the bees. So I can pass these frames around if you'd like to look at them, and pass them to your neighbor, as we go through. But this particular style hive that we have here, this hive body, this would be a deep hive body. So this is traditionally what you would keep the bees in as far as the brood area for the bees. When I say brood, do we know what brood is? It's all the babies, right? So the queen, she lays an egg. That egg then turns into a larva. The larva pupates, and then they seal the cell off. And they seal the cell off, and then in a different time frame, those bees will emerge. They'll either emerge as a queen, they'll emerge as a female worker bee, or a male drone. So, that's what happens on this frame within the hive body. So as population increases within this hive body, we would, make sure that our bottom board, which is what you would see on this particular hive, this is a screened bottom board. And if you could imagine, when you set, this is your base to the hive, when you set the base to the hive down, and this hive body is now arranged over top of that screen, like this. Some days when I don't want to get actually into the hive, it might be a little too cold out or something like that, I can go into the rear of the hive and I can pull my metal tray. And the neat thing about this metal tray is that the metal tray aligns with each crack between the frames. So just by looking at my metal tray, I can actually tell what's going on above in the hive. Gives me a little idea of what's going on. So then I can make some decisions, from that. So that's the style bottom board that I like. There are other bottom boards out there that are solid. They don't have screens. Some of them have screens without the metal. But I like this one. It's removable and inspectable, right? So, yeah.
You see what's going on.
You can see what's going on above, yes. Also, it's a good way to, we can talk a little bit about mites. The varroa mite is an enemy of the honeybee. It's a little parasitic mite that goes on to the honeybee, attaches near the rear of the honeybee's head. And they're looking for, in essence, a blood meal from the honeybee. And they do a lot of damage to honeybees and the honeybee's colonies. So when I pull that bottom board, I can actually look and see if I see any mites at the bottom that are dead. That gives me an idea of what's going on too from a treatment standpoint. So, all right, so this would be one level. As the bee population increases within this level, I don't want them to swarm, right? I want the population to continue to grow. I want to be able to increase the number of bees and hopefully at some point put on another box. So it would just be as simple as this to add room. You're just setting that on top, and then the bees from below, they will work their way up through the hive and do everything in the bottom hive in this hive as well. So they've expanded their footprint. I'll tell you a trick of the trade. Don't tell anybody. But sometimes if you give them an advantage or a reason to move up there, what you would do is you would take one of the frames from the bottom, replace it with an empty frame from this hive, put it here like this. And then when you add your next level, you've already enticed them to start working in the upper part of the box. So that's how, I normally would do it. Sometimes one frame, sometimes two frames. And when I'm getting into the hive to inspect them or to look and see what's going on, what I'll do is I will shuffle these frames that are empty and don't have anything on them, and I'll usually shuffle them from the outsides to the insides and kind of let them build out. So the honeybee will do it on their own, but if you help them a little bit from that perspective, it does wonders for them from an efficiency standpoint. So, okay, after we have our colony boxes on, this is a little bit older. I brought a older inner cover. So this inner cover kind of looks a little junky, but this is what absorbs a lot of moisture within the hive. So this is like your your roof, your subroof to the hive. So this would go on top like this, and there's a hole in the center, and that hole in the center will allow heat and moisture and things like that to be released from inside the hive. And the neat thing is that each time I put this layer on, whether it be this box or even the bottom board or the medium board, the honeybee will make something called, I'm going to ask any questions or ask for an answer. Does anyone know what the paste-like substance is that the honeybee makes in order to seal the hive spaces?
Wax.
Anybody know?
Wax.
It's kind of like wax. Yes, they do make wax, so you're right. It starts with a P. Where's that? Propolis, you got it. All right, good job. So are you a beekeeper? No, okay, I thought I was. Okay, I just want to make sure. Not too many people get that unless they're a beekeeper, so that's good. All right. But yes, so there is a substance called propolis, and the propolis is what seals things together. It's like a glue. So, as a beekeeper, I am going to, put my equipment on, and this is just the jacket. They come in all different types of jackets. This particular jacket I like because it's not solid. If you notice, it's kind of like sheer or see-through, and it doesn't allow the honeybee to get their stinger through to my skin. So I can wear short sleeve under here and be pretty cool while I'm beekeeping. And that's the name of this jacket too, Be Cool. So it zips, it zips up all the way to here. And then this part comes on like this. It kind of sits on. I usually wear a ball cap underneath. It helps to hold the top of my veil off of the top of my head, because as I sweat, because that happens, as I sweat, this likes to map to my forehead and top of my head. And yes, the bees can get their stinger through there. So, it's kind of uncomfortable. So I try to build that out a little bit further. Yeah. So, come right out of here. And then once I have my jacket on and I'm all...
Bees sting, do they die?
When a honeybee stings, it does die, yes. That's why they don't like to sting. A lot of times they'll bounce their bodies off of you to warn you. Hey, you're too close. You need to change your behavior. You need to get away from the colony. You need to get away from the hive. But they will sting. And when they do sting, yes, they pass away. Not instantaneous, but pretty near future, they'll pass away. So the next thing, after I get my jacket all squared away, is I have these nice big long gloves. I used to worry a lot about getting the cuffs aligned or get one cuff over the other cuff, and I've learned that over the years, if you just kind of keep rolling it up and it becomes kind of bunched up here, that the bees can't really get in one way or the other. So you don't have to worry about that too much as long as you have a lot of bunching here. That bunching is a beekeeper's friend because they really can't get to your skin when they're all bunched up. So these are, the gloves. They're a little bit bulky, but I'd rather be bulky than be stung, right? Yeah. All right. So I have my gloves on. This is actually a new jacket for this year. My other one started to tear, and wasn't very safe, so I had to take that one and put it aside. But so that's why this one's still nice and kind of like bright white. Yes.
The bees distinguish two colors.
Yes, they absolutely can.
Is there a reason that most bees wear a white jacket?
There is, and so are you a beekeeper too? So the reason why white is chosen for the beekeeper color, number one, it's cool. It's usually cool when you're doing beekeeping outside. So in the summer months, it's cooler. The second thing is, what do you think here in Western Pennsylvania is like a number one enemy to honeybees?
Wasps.
Wasps. Okay. Anything else? How about something that has fur?
Bears, the bear.
So the black bear. And so as the black bear has, tormented honeybees for hundreds of years, it's kind of, I think, built into their DNA to know that there's a color associated with a black bear, and that color is something that they're really not liking, especially because the honeybee senses carbon dioxide exhalation, and they usually target your mouth or your face area when they're going to go to sting. So that's why they're flying around your eyes and your ears, is because they're attracted to carbon dioxide. So with bears, when bears are up and they have their face down to the crack of a hive and they're looking to knock the hive off of the stem and eat the comb or eat the larva or the honey, their face is right there, with the bees. So darker colors aren't very good in the apiary. Yep. All right, so I have the last component of the hive. This is called a telescoping lid, just because it telescopes down over top of your inner cover and the boxes. The top is metal. The sides are painted. And this is, they're waterproofing in essence. This is what you've done to make sure that you're not getting any elements into the hive. This is what we use for all winter long as well. We're not really doing too much more to the hive over the winter. Except for we typically would put a duct, like a air duct insulation. It's real thin plastic. It's like the silver duct insulation you would see. And we would normally wrap that around this part of the hive underneath. And then we staple it closed for the winter time, just to add a little more R factor for the honeybees. So, but when I go to inspect these bees, I have to apologize. I did not bring my smoker can. And the reason I didn't bring my smoker can is that my 11-year-old is doing a bee presentation at his school today. So we were, when I saw him walking out with the bag, I was like, well, I need that smoker, but I thought it was a little more important that he had it. So, but what I would do is, if you can imagine a smoker can, and I think you'll see some in the videos, prior to working with the bees, I would go around to the front part of the hive where they would go into their entrance, and I would put some smoke across the entrance. And what that does to the bees, there's a lot of different trains of thought on why smoke calms the bees. My theory is that when you are introducing smoke into the hive, it automatically puts the bee into a survival mode. So after I introduce some smoke into the hive, the reason why I do that is because I feel the bees go into a self-preservation mode when you introduce smoke into the hive. Out in the wild, there's far more wild colonies of bees than there are bees that are captured by beekeepers. And one of the threats to the hive over the years are wildfires. And so if you have a wildfire that's approaching a hive or an apiary, the bees are going to sense that. And what they want to do is their initial reaction is to consume honey and be ready to abandon the hive, okay? Because their hive goes up in smoke and flame. They want to all get out of the hive before, they're trapped in there and burn up. So they go in and they start to consume honey. And when they do that, they've kind of forgotten all about any other threat, because the real threat is the fire. It's no longer me. So their attention has, been removed from me. So that makes them a little more calm. And also why I don't usually go to the apiary the very next day, because they still have that sugar rush from the day before, because they consumed a lot of honey and they're a little more wild at that time. So what I would do is I would take this. Usually I flip my tool over and I give it a bump here, because remember, it's sealed shut with Propolis, right. So yeah, we got that off. Then our next piece that we have to remove is the inner cover. And I'm taking my tool here. I usually have to work around the corners and open the box up. And then I would remove that. Prior to removing the lid, because there's a hole, I usually introduce a couple more puffs of smoke through the hole here too as well. Then I have my tool and I'm going to start to introduce it in between my frames to try to pry them apart because they're all stuck together as well. And once I get them apart, I will use my tool to pry an end out. Once I get one of the ends pried up, I'll go to the other side and I'll pry it up. And then I can pull my frame and do my inspection. What I'm looking for on the frames, a lot of people think that it's really important that every time you get into the hive, you find the what? Queen. And it is important. However, I am not so concerned with trying to find her. She's in there somewhere within this hive, and she's there because when I look at this frame, I'm going to see eggs, larvae, and capped brood cells. If I don't see eggs on any of these frames, then I know I have a queen problem. I know that either the queen is in there and she just hasn't started laying yet because she's a new queen, or I don't have a queen at all, or there's a queen cell that's capped inside here that she just hasn't emerged yet. So I'm looking for, all those things to start to make a decision on what my next step is. But if I find that there's a frame that has eggs all over it, and that there's cells that are capped off, I am thrilled that I could see that the beehive is doing well, and I really could care less if I see her or not. But it's always neat to see her because she's about this long, and she's much larger than any of the rest of the bees. And it's really neat to see her because she just goes from hole to hole and sticks her butt down inside this hole and releases an egg. And she can lay up to a few thousand a day.
Okay.
A few thousand. Yep. So she really goes to work. She doesn't have to forage for any of the food that's in there. All of her workers will feed her. They will take care of her while she's in there. And she is really only out of the hive one time in her life. And that's when she needs to go and be mated. So she goes, after she hatches, she sexually matures for a few days. And then she goes out of the hive and goes on her mating flight, where she meets up with 20, 30 drones. And then she flies back to her hive and she never has to leave again. So that's the kind of life of a queen. So she spends a lot of her life in the dark, unless I get to see her on a frame on a nice sunny day. So if I could, I'll pass this frame around. This frame is from a medium hive body. So you can see, like if you would compare it, it's a little bit shallower of a frame. And this is usually the type of frame where we would have our honey storage on this frame. Because honey, if you can imagine, on both sides of this frame and filled up in a box becomes very heavy. So the weight of this full 90 pounds or so when it's full of honey in comparison to a medium box being, roughly 50, 60 pounds, somewhere around there, it's a lot more manageable. So can I start here? And okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you can smell it too, you can still smell like yeah.
Is the smoke, is the honey pick up
The smoke?
yeah.
No, it really does not.
What about, now, you got two of those. How high, you put three on?
Yeah, so I will tell you that in Western Pennsylvania, the target amount of boxes to get through a winter is usually 2. So you want this to be your your amount of boxes that you want to get through the winter time. Okay. So once you get to this level, what I would do is I would put a queen excluder. It's kind of like a fence on top of here first. And then I would add my other boxes to that. And if you can imagine, I try to target my hive from the ground up. I try to target my hive to start at about 16 or 17 inches from the ground. So, this is a lot higher. So really I can be up 4, 5, 6 boxes I could have stacked in a line, and that's not unusual. So.
What do you use to make the smoke?
To make the smoke, I typically just use some pine shavings, like you would use for bedding for chickens or anything else. There was a gentleman in my last class that I taught at Butler County Community College. They owned a lumber mill, like they did it as a hobby on the side. So he brought me this ginormous bag of dry, like oak and all those other things that he had. And I really enjoyed that because they burned a lot better than the pine shavings. The pine shavings, the only reason why I don't like the pine shavings, it does a great job, but the only reason why I don't like the pine shavings is it's really difficult to open the lid on the smoker can to fill it with more fuel because the pine chips give off like a tar. And the tar is like a seal, just like propolis. So, I'm constantly sticking my tool in there to try to pry that open. So, okay, so any idea how many days it takes an egg to hatch on a frame of bees? Any ideas? Anyone want to take a guess? All right, so I'll just quickly, a queen emerges first out of all the other incubation periods. And she is in her queen cell and she gets fed royal jelly, which makes her grow very quickly. So she can emerge and be out of the cell in roughly 16 days. All right? 16 days. So that's going from an egg to a queen bee size. Now, while she's out, she's still, like I said, maturing a little bit, but she's emerged within that 16-day time frame. The next one, which is the worker bee, the female, all the females are worker bees. Those bees are typically around 20 to 21 days. So how long it takes for them to emerge. And this is all based on like environmental conditions and, different things that go on within the hive as far as temperature and things as to, whether it's a half a day that 21st day or the first quarter of the day, the 21st day. It's not exactly, every time. But the last bee, the drone, any ideas how many days it takes for a drone? About 24 days. 24 days. So, yeah, those are the milestones for the bees. Another thing is how many days do you think a bee lives? Any guesses?
60.
That's a good guess. That is a good guess. That's about the lifespan of the bee. During the summer months, I would say, during like the foraging season, that's where you can see on average around the length of lifetime for bee. During the fall months and into the winter, the bees know that it's going to get cooled, so they make these bees called fat bees. And the fat bees just have extra for them, to get through the winter. And that's, the type of bee that you make. And they roughly make it almost 100 days. They can make it 100 days in comparison to your summertime forager at 60. So.
The queen lays a larva.
The queen lays the egg.
Into that thing we're passing around.
Yes, into one of those little cells.
Okay, now where does that frame come from? Is that wax? Did the bees make those? They made
It does. So underneath that wax is a plastic foundation that foundation is pre-coated with a wax base so that the bees don't really have to start from scratch. They have like a wall to build on. And then they draw that wax out to the thickness that they would need to be able to incubate a larva, and then they go with it.
So that plastic, that's like the back of the,
Correct.
then they put the hex, they're hexagonal, right?
Six-sided.
Yeah. And then they, when the egg's in there, then they seal it up.
Correct. They seal it up midway between the development of the egg to the larva. When it starts to pupate, it's sealed.
And then when the bee starts some, it can get out of there.
It does. It chews its way out. Yep. And the other bees help it sometimes. So I've actually been inside my hive on several occasions where I found a queen cell, and inside the queen cell I can see a little antenna sticking out of the little hole at the end. So you don't think I'm going to put it back in, right? No, I'm definitely getting her out of there. So I usually take a toothpick and I pry the end of it open with a toothpick so I get to see the queen emerge. And that's kind of like a neat thing for me to see the queen emerge, because that's like the predecessor who's taking over that particular colony now.
So when that mature bee comes out of that cell, then do they fill it with honey after that?
Yes and no. So a lot of times where the brood is being laid, that area is only for brood production. Usually on the corners of the frame, up in the corners and around the peripheral part of the frame, like that's where you would see honey being stored. But in the center of most of the frames, in those early levels, is going to be all egg production. Now, I will say that there might be 10 spaces where there might be, it's kind of like a little honey, like a cell or two of honey, and that's just so that the food's closer. So it's not all brood. It might be like a honey cell here and there. So yeah. Okay, so I do have some photos and things more to talk about. So can everyone see the screen? Okay.
Do you build those boxes?
I don't. However, I've been through several different types of boxes and different manufacturers and different assembly techniques. And I found that the best assembly technique for these boxes are the same thing that you might use in a furniture drawer. It's the dovetail joint. So the dovetail joint is a very important joint. It's something that I can use my tool and routinely pry against to get my tool in there. And this joint is stapled and glued as well. Just a square joint or even like a box joint does not hold up like this dovetail joint does. So I found a place that has the tool to, the woodworking tool to do the dovetail joints, and that's what I use. So, okay, so this is a quick video. I'm just going to play it through. This is one of the apiaries that we helped, get started. And you'll see some photos of my wife. Actually, she's the star of this particular movie. She has her bee outfit on, and she's out in the middle of the field, and she's starting to remove some frames from the beehive. This photo, just starting off this video, if everybody can see this photo. This is actually a swarm of bees that formed on the outside of one of my boxes. So within the apiary, a swarm of migrant bees came from like a tree off somewhere in the forest, and they're looking for a new home. And they probably had a virgin queen with the swarm. So they came into our apiary to hopefully be mated and find a new place to live. And then that's where they kind of balled up as one on the side of the hive.
Do you want that to happen, or?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, swarms are a little bit tough when you lose them from your hive, because you go from, having a full box to almost 2/3 of your bees sometimes leaving, from your box. but they're usually leaving enough bees back to continue on in their population, you know.
So there's a queen in there that's looking to be mated,
In that ball bees right there.
and all the other bees came with her.
Yep. So, yep. So that'll happen. She'll either do it on her own or she'll leave with and come with an entourage. And it all depends on how far she has to go or where she's coming from. There's a lot of different phenomenons that happen when that is taking place.
Well, where the queen was produced, can't she be fertilized by the bees in her home colony then?
She doesn't want to because she wants to go out and be genetically diversified. So when you go into my, like if you go into my boxes and a lot of other people's boxes as well, I will see specific characteristics on the bees inside there that are different than other bees. And the survivor stock of my bees, I removed from a wall in Kennerdale, PA. So a friend of mine had a camp in Kennerdale, PA that had a bee infestation in the wall, and his aunt did not want to harm the bees. So he called me and said, "Hey, are you still doing the beekeeping?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, why don't you come up and take a look at this wall?" And I said, I had no idea what to do with bees in a wall, you know. But I started reading about it. I made myself a bee vacuum. And we went and we opened up the wall, took the drywall off, and here I had comb just in the wall. And I removed all the comb and I rubber banded them to the frames and I stuck them into my hive. And I was like, well, I hope I got the queen because I did a lot of work here and this was a long drive, you know, to not. And then right before I was getting ready to give up, I was just looking around on the remainder of the bees in there and I found her still in the wall. So I used this device called a queen catcher. Kind of looks like a hair clip. And I put her into my queen catcher and took her from the wall and put her into the box and released her. And then I put the lid on and then I took her home. So that particular DNA, it was really, really good. I was able to graft multiple colonies from that particular set of bees, and they are very hygienic, they're very defensive, and they're great honey makers. So those are really the three characteristics that I look for in the bees. So
You have to go buy some of the queens. What do they cost?
if you have to go buy a queen, you can buy a queen from a beekeeper. Some queens go for $50 to $80 for a queen. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna play this video. Can everyone hear?
Yeah.
Music?
8.
Okay, so that was a little video so we could actually see in the apiary, see what it looks like to pull the box, off. I have some other photographs I'd like to share with you all. So this is just an up close video of bees going in and out of the hive there. And you can see the ball bees underneath. Sometimes the bees will ball up on the outside of the hive because it's too hot inside. So there's a terminology called bearding. So they will beard on the outside of the hive just to get out of the hive to cool off, and they'll work their way back into the colony. So this was a photo of bees that I got out of a roof of a house. You see how they made their home up inside the rafter?
When you have a mass of bees like that, and the ones that are like on the inside of it, they don't get overheated, or they can still get oxygen in there.
Yeah, the bees are really good at fanning. So even if they're not flying, they're using their wings to move air. They're really good at moving air from one place to another.
What do they eat?
The bees will use pollen and nectar from the flowers, and they'll use that as their food because it's a protein for them.
They die.
Yep,
Don't they eat the honey?
they do eat the honey. They eat the honey, but they usually only eat the honey in the off season. So they're, getting a lot of their regular food and daily meal from, being out and foraging. And there are some spots where they would store it in the hive for, immediate use, but they're looking to pack it in for the winter time. So, and they seal it off. So they have to remelt the wax in order to, get to the actual honey. So because they actually dehumidify each cell until the water content of the cell is hardly anything. And then that's when they seal it.
What's the life expectancy of a bee, of a drone?
Of a drone? So a drone can live, a fairly long life, but they pass away when they mate. So when they mate, they're done. And they are not typically allowed to overwinter in the hive. So usually throughout the wintertime, there won't be any drones present within the hive. Maybe a handful, that's probably it. Okay, so, and that one. This was a neat picture. This happened last year. I just so happened to help with the volunteer fire department in my township, and the police called me from the high school, and they said, "Hey, can you come and get these bees?" And I said, "Well, where are they at?" And he said, "Well, aren't you a fireman? They're on the fire hydrant." So I just kind of very ironic that happened to me. But we were able to get the bees off of the fire hydrant. And if you look very, very closely in the picture, I'll kind of go down. Do you see them kind of marching into the box? Yeah. That's because I caught the queen with my queen clip. I saw her and I caught her with my queen clip and I put her into the hive. And the rest of those bees are smelling the pheromone from the queen, and they are marching in there to be with her. So I don't have to, worry about kind of brushing the bees off of the fire hydrant. It's just a matter of time. They'll all march in there, and I'll close up that hive and take it back to my apiary. Here's another photo of. This is a swarm that was on a dead tree that was fallen over. And so I wanted to remove, that swarm from the tree. So I, put the box underneath of it and was able to entice the bees that would be a better home. And like I said, it usually just takes time. So. There's a friend of mine. He's just, we clipped a branch off of a pine tree, and there was a swarm on a pine tree. So we clipped that branch off, and we were able to take that branch and put it over top of the hive. Usually when you take it and you give it a swift shake, the bees fall off of there in a clump right into the box. So it works out really well. There's another swarm on a fruit tree that I have in the yard.
Oh, yes, yes.
Shush.
Very cool.
And this was another swarm on the side of one of the boxes. So you can see kind of in mid-flight, the bee up at the top there, it's kind of neat to get them in action. Kind of in mid-flight, it freezes them in time. So it's neat to see, that as well.
So that those boxes, they're not they're not strapped together, and it doesn't. You get a windstorm that they blow them over.
Well, I will tell you that some of these photos are early on in our beekeeping endeavor between my wife and I. So we've evolved, I would say, as beekeepers. And so now what we use is, I don't have one with me, but does everyone know what like a ratchet strap looks like?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we do now is we take a ratchet strap and we ratchet strap across the top of the bees, down underneath the hive, and ratchet strap it together. And you would think that that would be in case of like a windstorm or something like along those lines. This actually was at first more for a bear issue. It would not allow the bear to get the hive and knock it from the stand as easy. So that's what we used initially. Then we found that the bears would get through a ratchet strap faster than you can imagine. So we had to make the decision to go to an electric fence. And one of the things that we do in comparison to other apiaries that I visited and other beekeepers' yards that I've been at, they will take a electric fence and make quite a large area around their apiary, around their boxes, more so that you're creating like a fence where you would have to go into. And when I go there, like a lot of times everything's overgrown. It doesn't look very nice. It's kind of like not very eye-pleasing in my opinion, I would usually go to tend the bees and I like to be relaxed and focused on them. I don't want to think about all these weeds that are kind of, growing up where I don't want them to be at. So the model that I picked was I used the hive stand as my base for the electric fence. So I took plastic insulators and I extended plastic insulators about 10 inches away from the face of my stand, all the way around at the base. And we got a solar electric fence controller, and my wife and I drove ground rods the length of the beehive stand, and we put it all together and let that thing charge and knock on what? We haven't had a problem. So we did have 2 occasions where we had damage that was done, and I had to have the game commission come. The game commission came and they set a bear trap, and we were successful every single time that we set a bear trap. The game warden said, that bear is probably not in the area anymore. We'll set it, we'll see what happens. Well, 3 birthday cakes later, the bear was in the trap. And then the neat thing is that it's a kind of like a win-win in my opinion, because it's a win-win for the bear. The bear gets relocated, it's alive. The game warden gets to do some measuring on the bear to make sure that they keep record of what had happened, where the bear was. They don't want to create nuisance bears, but they do give the bear an hearing with a number, and they release it. So that's what happens or happened to us twice. So, and it's a little scary when you have a bear in a trap because the game warden's kind of depending on me. He said, would you mind, every morning before you, go and start your day, just go and see if that door's closed. I said, okay. So I walked down the first day and the door's closed. And I'm like, this is interesting. So I got a little bit closer. And I'm looking in there and I don't see anything. And I got a stick and I flipped the little metal piece. It's like a swivel eyelet out of the way with a stick. And there's 2 raccoons in there. So we got 2 raccoons. So, and I didn't know what to do, so I called him up and he's like, all right, I'll be over. So he came over and took care of the raccoons. And then he rebaited the trap because the raccoons ate all the birthday cake. And we rebaited it. And then it was like 2 days later, we was walking out the end of the driveway and I looked down into the woods again and the door's closed. And I said, I hope it's not more raccoons. The game warden wasn't thrilled that he had to come over and deal with the raccoons. So when I walked down there, I got a little bit closer and the whole bear trap. Did you ever see one of those bear traps? There's like a big round barrel and it has a spring-loaded door on it on the one end. The whole bear trap moved. And it's on a trailer wheels. It moved, it like swayed. And I said, uh-oh. And then I made sure all my kids were still not in the bear trap because they were like, really interested in it as well. So I went down and I got that same stick and I moved that eyelet up out of the way and I looked and that's all I saw with these eyes and this nose. And the bear kind of looked at me and sometimes you think you can you get a sense from people or, things. The bear looked at me and just, I think, felt sad. It was just sad. It was like, you got me. I'm here. Now what are you going to do with me? It just wanted the next step, to take place. So, but the nice thing was that we still had an intact apiary. We didn't have any more, destruction because it gets very costly really quickly. So, I wanted to make sure that if you have any questions that I haven't already answered, that, we can go over those things. I have, they're going to pass around that frame that I pass around. Yeah. Okay. That's good. So one of the other things that I brought, and these are all, sealed up, so they're really no danger, is that I have these little packets, almost like a cat food kind of like tin. And these things, what I would use specifically for is the trying to get my varroa mite count down. I want to make sure I don't have too many varroa mites within the colony. So I use this stuff. This particular stuff is called Apiguard. And this Apiguard has thymol. Does everyone know what thymol is? It has a percentage of thymol of 25%. So I would want to treat, and I do treat my bees after I take the honey off for the season. So when we harvest at the end of the summer and we take the honey off, that's when I like to treat, because that's when the varroa mite count is usually the highest within the colony. And I want to get that count down because any new bees that I have emerging that are going to be the overwintering bees, I don't want to have a problem with mites. I want them to overwinter and be as healthy as they can going into wintertime. So this Apiguard is, what we would use. This Apiguard, once it's open, would kind of go in between the top of the hive and the back part of the hive. And it would go underneath the inner cover, and then we would put the cover on. And in about, usually a couple days, but I usually wait a week, a half to 2 weeks, I'll go back in the hive and I'll just remove this and it'll be completely empty. So the bees will take and dry out all of this. It's kind of like a syrupy paste, and they'll dry it all out, and they'll carry the particles of the thymol down through the hive to remove it from the hive. They don't want it in there. And when they do that, it reduces the varroa mite population. So that's Apiguard.
You have to leave some honey in the hives for them to winter over.
Yes, that's a great question. So when we harvest honey, I like to keep my boxes at how many levels for the winter? 2 levels. Anything above 2 levels, I consider that harvestable. So I will put a queen excluder above that, and then whatever honey I have in those boxes above that, will be harvestable. The bees prior to wintertime, when I remove those other boxes, will fill up most of those frames in here with honey. And they'll start to not lay as much brood, because going into wintertime, they're not trying to build the population up too much any longer. They're trying to just sustain for the wintertime. So
How do you process your honey?
that's a good question. Initially by hand. Okay, so that was our first go around. We had a few boxes, and we thought it would just be simple to scrape the comb off and let it drip down through cheesecloth and go into a bucket and kind of squeeze it every once in a while and manipulate it. It was horrible. It was a big mess. Yes, you're absolutely right. So with any business, you start to learn the tricks of the trade, and you grow, and we had several frames to process. So we made the family decision that this is not the way to go. So we had to buy still by hand, but it was a centrifuge spinner. Guess how many frames at a time that thing was able to handle? 2. So we would uncap the honey on both sides of the frame, and we put the frame in, and we would spin it by hand. And you spin it and spin it and spin it and spin it, and then you think you're done, but you're not. You have to go in, remove the frame, flip it around, put it back in so that the other face throws the honey to the side wall of the spinner and drops the honey down to the bottom. So yeah, it was faster than the cheesecloth method and a little bit less messy, but still a learning curve for us. So then we went through that, and we decided to get an electric one. And so the electric one was like, okay, I'll put the bee's knees. Yeah, with the bee's knees. So the electric one really, really worked. And it was nice because you could do other things while the electric one was processing the honey. And basically it was nothing more than the same thing as the hand crank, but with a motor. And now they make them in all different frame sizes. So I'm aspiring to get to the point where we can get like a 30 frame processor. Yeah, and the 30 frame processor would be kind of where we are at from amount of frames that we have. So that allows us still to walk away from that processing and go and do other things like preparing labels for the bottles, or getting the rest of our buckets in line for being poured out of the bottom of that spinner. Because the process is spinning the honey, it accumulates at the base of that spinner. The honey is then tapped from the base of that spinner through a screened sieve. It traps out a lot of the larger particles and pieces of wax. The honey drips down to a smaller cross-section screen, and then underneath of that, it drips into a 5-gallon bucket. Once it drips into a 5-gallon bucket, that honey is now consumable. Like, even though honey's consumable even with a comb in it, but this is like what you would see in a bottle, typically at the bottom. So we would allow that bucket to fill up. We take that bucket and we set it in a staging area, and we put the lid on it. But when I put the lid on it, I close the lid almost all the way, but just leave a little crack for air, because we've learned that by letting the honey sit for about 24 hours in that bucket, it allows all of the air bubbles to release from the honey and float to the top. And so now when we tap that honey out of the bottom of the bucket, we are not getting any air bubbles in our honey bottles. And that's really important because when you're looking at it on a shelf, it looks like that it's nice and solid and well processed. So that's kind of like the process for us.
Where do you sell your honey?
So that's a great question. We've sold it before at the Bloom Cafe over on Route 228. I don't know if anyone's ever been. We sell it at Vivian's Bakehouse in Freeport, PA. We sell it at the Renshaw Farm in Freeport, PA. We have it at some coffee shops in Leechburg and Vanderdrift. We sell it from the end of our driveway when it's harvest time. We like to do that because the kids really like to be a part of that process, and they like to set up the tent at the end of the driveway and sell the honey. They think that's really cool. We live on Honeybee Drive, so that kind of worked out in our favor. And it's nice because the lane has like a turnaround. It's like a cul-de-sac, so you can come in and turn around and go back, get the honey. So I think from a business perspective, at this point for us, as far as a bottleneck goes, is that we are at the point where we could grow and make this like a really, really much larger thing. But my children are not 100% helpful yet. So I think we have to wait till we have that extra manpower to take that next step. But we are trying to build the foundation for something for later on, and they are interested in it now. They do help out quite a bit, which I'm really proud of them for. But so
They are helpful.
the bear, no, the bear are not helpful, but the kids are, yeah.
How much honey do you produce now?
So right now, I would say on average, I think it was I'll just go from like last year, we were at about 80 gallons. So we did about 80 gallons of honey.
And that's in the fall when you.
End of summer, beginning of fall. Yep. And we only harvest one time a year in comparison to other beekeepers. And I'll tell you that, I've been doing this not my whole life, but a long enough time now to know and understand that some of the honey that you buy and purchase off the shelf is not 100% honey. There's a lot of larger honey businesses that will truck in corn syrup, and they'll feed their bees. They'll feed their bees sugar water. They'll feed their bees different things, and that's not the pure stuff. We've made it a family ethical, decision that we are not going to supplement at all. We don't supplement at all. The only thing we would supplement is if there's one hive that's doing better and they have more honey stored and one hive that's not doing so well, we will shift some of that honey to that hive in order to get them jump started again. So that's something that, we have done, but we don't make sugar water concoctions anymore, in essence, for the bees. So yeah, I would just be cautious of the honey that you buy. I mean, it's still, it's good for you, but it's all in who's making it and how they're making it. So if you don't question the process, or you don't question the way that it's being made, and then you don't know exactly what you're getting, in essence. So, with that, I would just like to, take definitely any questions that anyone has, at this point, about honey or bees or, yeah.
You said there's a lot more wild hives. As a kid and my whole time I have never seen a wild hive in the woods. Do you? Do you see them?
I don't see them per se, like just taking a walk through the woods, but I've noticed that now I've seen more than ever, different ways that bees are living in the wild. And that's because sometimes I'll get a phone call from the golf course, and the golf course will call and they'll say, "Hey, we had half of our oak tree come down in a windstorm." And I said, "Oh, I'll call a tree trimmer." And they're like, "No, you don't get it. Half of that tree is full of honeybees." And I'm like, "Really?" And So I go down and take a look, and sure enough, that knot or that side where it rotted going down into the tree, that section of tree is just completely slammed full of honeybees. So, once you start to really open and broaden your, thought on where these bees can fit and where they can live, it's really very simple to know that you're not going to be able to be at 30 or 40 feet into the air in a knot on an oak tree. You'll probably never even know that there's honeybees in there, but they could be right into your yard next door. So
And that's where they like to be, is inside a hollow in a tree.
that's correct. Yep. That's correct. So, any more questions? Yes.
I know visited invite, and one time we had this boiling bush in our backyard, and bees came, and there's on that bush, they had come with the bees off the bush.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens. That happens a lot. When bees are looking to recolonize and they move from one place to another, they send scout bees out. And the scout bees go out and they are flying around and they're looking for that new cavity, something that's going to be large enough for them to all move to. And then the scout bees come back from their scouting mission and tell the rest of the bees through their bee dance or their bee movements, they communicate with one another the direction that they need to fly in and how far they need to fly in order to get to that new cavity. So
Where did the bees come from? Where they come from?
the ones that came on your bush, probably within the distance of 200 to 300 yards from your bush, there was a tree somewhere or another colony somewhere that had swarmed, and they just decided to use your bush as a temporary place to hang out until the scout bees told them where to go. Yeah. So. Yes.
But no, where is your farm?
My farm is in Freeport, PA.
A Freeport.
Yep.
Now, do you have oars, or do you?
We, my kid suggested that we create a driveway around our apiary so you could drive in and drive through, but that wasn't just it. He said we should also put a box there so people had to pay, and I was like, so I say he might be like a good businessman someday, yeah, but yeah, so not quite yet, but yeah.
How many children do you have?
How much what?
How many children do you have?
I have 3 boys.
You boys. Oh,
Yep, I have 3 boys. So.
They'll make good workers for you.
Yeah, they're very good workers. In fact, we over this past weekend, we had to take a little trip. My oldest son and I took a little trip, and I got a phone call from my middle son, and he said, "Dad, I was driving around the apiary on the quad, and I found a bee swarm." And I said, "Oh yeah?" And he was like, "Yep, we caught it. It's in the box." And I said, "You did what?" And he said, "Well, me and Zachary put our bee suits on and we took over the box and we caught the bee swarm." And I was like, "Where's your mother at?" So yeah, but they do well. They do work together very well. Yeah. So
Well, you don't need a security system on your home.
nope.
Nope. Can break into a bee.
No. Yeah, we have plenty of bees. There are watchdogs for sure.
Does anybody work with bees without a suit?
Well, there are people who work with bees without a suit. And when you're catching a swarm, typically there's the bees aren't protecting their young. There's no young associated with the bees when they're swarmed because there's no eggs. So they aren't so much concentrating on protecting their young or protecting a colony at that point. So a lot of times in a swarm situation, you may not get stung, okay? But with any of my students that I've had in the past or anybody that I've mentored, I don't permit them to take any risks because it's just not worth it. If you are not allergic to bees, you can become allergic because of like a situation where you're stung with, a lot of bees. And so, I just don't take any chances without using the proper PPE. So, yes.
Can't the police use your bees to catch thieves?
Use the bees to catch thieves?
Yeah, said all these home deliveries anywhere you have a box and your portion is stolen. put a box of bees there.
That would be an interesting concept for sure. Yeah.
What's been attacking the beehive? He had a beekeeper friend in Frederick, and I think most of his bees were destroyed. And he said that this is happening a lot, or maybe that was several years ago and it's past now.
Yeah. Well, there is some different things from a beekeeping standpoint that you have to be really careful of. And one of the things is overharvesting. So if you overharvest the honey, then you're putting the best bees at a real risk. They're at a real risk for the wintertime, not having enough honey to be able to sustain them. And keep in mind that bees are living things. So they get stressed just like anybody else would in the world. And when people are stressed and, animals are stressed, they're more likely to sting. They're more susceptible to disease. And, their ability to, survive isn't great. So when you have, potentially the overharvesting of honey, you have the lack of treatment for the varroa mite and maybe some other small things that you might not be doing just 100% correctly. That really does not help to sustain the population very well.
I just heard on the 12 o'clock news that there was a swarm at one of the stadiums.
I heard that too on the way here. That was the Heinz Field or the Acrisure Stadium. I guess there must be a concert or something that's going to be taking place there. And they were setting up the stage, and there must have been a swarm that had left from the local area and decided to take up residence there temporarily. A lot of times, there's a lot of hype about it, but we all know that those bees, they are simply just in a holding pattern. When they land like that, like in a big ball on the stage, they're in a holding pattern. They're just going to hang out there until what happens? Till the scouts go out, come back and tell the rest of the population, this direction, this distance, let's go. So, yeah.
There was a bee farm, I think it was Beaver County, a couple of weeks ago where someone lit their beehives.
I heard about that as well. Yeah, that's terrible news. So yeah,
Were the other ones all keep working, like the ones around where they were burned, will they keep working?
yeah, I'm sure that that particular farm that happened to, that I'm pretty sure that owner has quite a few other bees, but with any colony loss, it's detrimental to business. So I don't know why that happened. In the bee business, you have to be try to be as we don't at our house we really don't have any neighbors. We do have neighbors, but they're pretty far. So, I always give them a jar of honey every year and say, thanks for being a good neighbor, because I'm sure that they, come across our bees in their garden or, on their grass or whatever. So, I want to make sure that I keep them happy. So I'm not saying that happened in that particular case, but there are conflicts with beekeepers and, housing developments and, the different residences because, honeybees are very opportunistic. So if there's an opportunity for a food source or a water source, they're going to make a beeline directly to those sources so that they can shorten up the amount of energy that they need to put out in order to go and collect water and collect food. And if that's someone's swimming pool, then, you could have a conflict there. So being a good beekeeper makes you try to think outside the box when you're going to create these colonies or create these apiaries so that you have a water source nearby that's public, like a lake or a stream or a river, and not someone's swimming pool, so.
That's what, years ago, we lived right across from Vicinity, the high school.
Okay.
And one of our neighbors that lived from me a half a mile away had stopped by to see, we've seen a swarm of bees.
Yeah.
And the prick ran behind our house. So that's probably why they was checking there. They were all over the neighborhood checking it. by the time they got back home, look at the bees were back out too.
Sure. Yeah. So,
I was at Free Buffalo Golf Course, which is near.
oh yeah, I know where that's at.
We were out there one time and we were walking down the fairway and there was a swarm. You could see the queen. She was in the lead and all the boys and everybody else they were all following her wherever they were going there.
Yep. That's pretty neat. Yes.
I was taking a walk down. There was a sign down to bother bees, man. Honeyweeks.
That's neat. Yeah. You saw them down where you were walking?
Yeah.
Nice. 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 It's good.
It
Yes.
was a great presentation.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you listening to me for, the last hour. There, hopefully we'll something again. Thank you.
The sun is never
What's that? Yeah, my audience, I think, was better. Yeah, so.
How'd you get started? Was it in the family, your father, your parents, right?
It really wasn't. It was just, my wife was actually more interested in it than I was. And, she wanted to try it. So I bought her all the stuff and then we went and took a class together. And then we found out that we were pregnant. So, I got stuck with the hobby because we had already pre-ordered the bees and everything. So she was like, I don't think I could get stung and be pregnant. And I was like, okay. So I did it and then I liked it and then covers kind of this.
You would think it in evolution, like Mother Nature would change.